So you are about to watch my interview with artist and fashion stylist slash designer Caroline Chinakwe. It was a fantastic interview where she told me about her career in the fashion industry and how that's led to her developing her own art style. I hope you enjoy. So could you talk to me about your career in the fashion industry? That's what I'm really interested in. I want to know what it's like.
Okay. Well, I mean, I did a lot in the fashion industry. So when I graduated, before I even graduated, I went straight into work. I started working for Nicole Fari, which is a high street label. And I started working in production in Nicole Fari, and production was something that we weren't really taught about. You know, when you're in school, you don't really get told about all the different careers that you could actually get from the subject that you're studying. You know, in fashion, you're mainly taught about being a fashion designer, and that's really it. And unless you know, and then you find someone that specializes there, but you don't really get taught, oh well, you know, when you graduate you can do this and you can do that. So I fell into it because I joined an agency and got into garment technology, which is just all about the manufacturing of the fashion and the quality control of it, checking, making sure it's made well, making sure it fits well, and all that kind of stuff. And I found myself really, really interested in that because I love sewing, and it's still something that I've carried on with throughout my whole career. Is sewing. It's my downtime when I want to relax. I'm on a sewing machine. I could be there for hours. So yeah, I really enjoy that. And then after I finished that, I went into working with manufacturers in the UK, because around the time that I was working in garment technology, a lot of UK brands that we know, like Topshop and your Marks and Spencers, they all produced in the UK. Most of their collection was produced over here. So there was a huge garment industry in UK from London all the way up north. And you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands would get made over here. But then when cheaper manufacturing came on board from like China and India, everything moved out there, and that's how the fashion industry in the UK died. So I started working with a lot of the factories here to try and help them to become more self-sustainable, not to rely on the bigger companies, putting them in touch with startup designers like myself to work with them, working on smaller quantities. And yes, I did that for a few years, and slowly developed into giving one-to-one mentoring to designers, and then went into styling somehow. The transition, when I look back, I'm like, how did I transition from that? I started doing a lot of stuff for myself. So I started putting my own collection together. And I think that's how that developed, as I was sewing at home, putting my own collection together. And I became a mum at the age of 23 as well. I became freelance in my career. So a lot of my career became as a freelancer. So I was self-employed from like the age of 24. And yeah, so I started working a lot from home, doing bespoke stuff for people, giving advice to designers, working part-time in garment technology, working with factories part-time. And yeah, just developed my fashion career as a business, as a label. My label back then was called Born in 72, which is the year that I was born in, for anyone who's trying to figure that out, telling my age, but who cares? Yeah, so that developed into me styling for bands, like up and coming bands who would see my stuff and they would ask me to style for them. Did that and just developed styling, and just I did a lot more personal styling than I did magazines. I did magazines and stuff, but I really enjoyed more one-to-one styling.
When you get to talk with like whoever you're working with and get to work it out together.
Well, yeah, that as well. But also, you know, fashion is such a what's the word? A horrible industry, and an industry that's not very, you know, it's very focused on beauty, very focused on the immaterial things of life. So but the other side of it is that, you know, if it's done correctly, it gives a lot of confidence to people. So helping people that really weren't sure about their style, develop and change their styles to help them become more confident. That was really what I started getting more interested in. So like makeovers, for instance, and I know we see all these makeover shows and they're like, but they really, really work, and they really, really do a lot for people's self-confidence. I mean, you'll get people that would normally never go out, for instance, you know, be too scared to go to certain places they didn't think they would fit in, and you'd style them, and before you know it, they're just a completely different person. It brings out something completely different out of them, and a confidence that they didn't even know that they had. So I did a lot of that, and that's how I really carried on into styling.
Wow, that's brilliant, because I just assumed the fashion industry is this very, I don't know, bitchy, difficult place, but it sounds like
It absolutely is, and it still is.
so what
That
were your experiences of that?
So, you know, I mean, one of the reasons why I left the fashion industry and I really kind of stayed away from it was because of that, because of how bitchy the industry was, how much it was very superficial, and it was very cliquey, and it was all about who you know, how you look, how you sound, you know, what you look like. And it really wasn't about talent. And of course, there's a lot of talented people that do get into the industry and they do make it, but it wasn't really all about that, because there's a lot of people that are shit as well that are doing stuff, and you think, how the hell did you manage to break through? But it's really all about who you know. Like, I mean, all industries are about who you know, and if you know the right people, you'll get up the ladder much quicker. But you know, fashion, in terms of how superficial it was, how much it was focused on beauty, and how they didn't feel that there was anything wrong with putting people down, you know, to their face and telling them how, you know, crap they are, making you feel really, really terrible about yourself. So I found that me being in front of that a lot in the industry as a stylist, working with editors, you know, and casting directors and scouts who would put down girls that were just absolutely gorgeous and make them feel like shit, you know, because they just didn't quite fit that clothes correctly, or they didn't have the right skin tone, or they didn't have the right hair, or, you know, they were overweight, even though they were probably like a size 10, but they were too big, you know, just really ridiculous things like that, which, you know, me being a mum at a young age, but also working a lot for myself, I didn't really need to have that in my life, and I didn't really want to be part of it. So I really found myself being very selective of the work that I did and the people that I really wanted to work with, and just not being part of it. So I removed myself from the fashion industry in terms of like all the fashion shows and parties and networking. I removed myself from that, you know, very, very long time ago, because it just really wasn't me. And I didn't want to find myself losing myself in terms of who I was as a human being. And especially as an African girl living in the UK, you know, you can get, you know, there's so many obstacles that we have anyway going into the fashion industry, getting noticed, and you find yourself losing yourself just to fit in, you know, talking in a certain way, dressing a certain way, hanging out with people that you normally would never want to hang out with. And once I saw myself starting to do that, I was like, no, I'm out. You know, I really couldn't, I just didn't want to do that. And I really wanted to focus on just being the best of who I was as a person, finding ways of getting my career through just being me. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's more rewarding, you doing what you want to do as well. And one of the things I was reading about your Colorism exhibition and sort of the skin bleaching thing, I don't think it's it's not in mainstream media enough, it's not talked about enough. So could you like shine some light on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I got into art from fashion was because of the way models were being treated in the fashion industry, and especially dark-skinned Black girls, how they were treated in the fashion industry. And for me, you know, I didn't get a chance to work with enough Black models that I would have loved to work with. I didn't get enough of that chance. And so I started creating art pieces that reflected the type of the vision I had for Black women and how I saw them and how I wanted the rest of the world to see them, and really highlighting the beauty. And one of the, you know, a lot of my work, you will see dark skin Black models being used rather than fair skin Black models or mixed race Black models. And that was because, you know, I saw firsthand the way these girls were treated. And it was just, you know, it was just so sad and degrading. And as a Black person myself, I found myself having to turn down people that I would normally want to work with, and seeing dismay in their faces and the reject in their faces. And a lot of it was because of their skin tone, and a lot of it was because they had a darker skin tone. So you'd get lighter models that would be cast for jobs, and if you get a black girl and it was a dark-skinned black girl, it was a token dark-skinned black girl that would be used in a very derogatory type of way. She wouldn't be used because she was beautiful and they saw her beauty. It would be used because they wanted to highlight the blackness compared to the whiteness of her counter, of her peers. So, you know, it was really important for me to use a lot of black skin and dark skinned black girls in my artwork. And 2020, when everything happened with Black Lives Matter, and we're talking about racism and highlighting the issues and disadvantages and you know, the racism, you know, found all over the world, and the skin tone bias became such a big thing for me. And I realized that it really wasn't even, you know, there's different degrees of racism that Black people face, and depending on how dark you are, you would experience the hardest. And if you're very light, you would, you know, you might not even experience it at all. And my journey as a Black girl and as a fair-skinned Black girl was on the latter side. I didn't really experience it at all. And because I worked for myself most of my life, I didn't have to sit 24 hours or 7 days a week or 5 days a week, 10 hours a day in an industry that I had to really keep proving myself to. But, you know, I looked at it and I thought, okay, you know, the other side of racism is colorism, which is something that we don't talk about enough, which is something that we as Black people really need to talk about and deal with, because, you know, you can't really end racism. I don't think racism is something that will ever end. You'll never end prejudice and, you know, bias. You will never end that. But what you can do is end the way we feel about ourselves, amongst ourselves, how we see ourselves, how other Black people treat other Black people. And starting with skin tone, you know, we still have that issue within the Black community, within the brown community, about the lighter you are. And this is obviously all coming from colonization, that, you know, the fairer you are, the better jobs you're going to get, you know, the more respect you're going to get. And we see it day in, day out, you know, within every single walk of life, is that people feel a lot more comfortable the fairer skin you are. But what's sad is that it's seen also within our own community, is that, you know, Black boys especially would prefer lighter skin girl because they find her more attractive, and they want to have children with lighter skin girls because they feel like their kids have a better chance of being more beautiful. And you would hear them talking about this you know, amongst themselves. And it's something it's very painful to hear that's still going on, because it's something that I know that was part of my younger generation when I was growing up. But I thought, you know, over the years things had gotten better, especially within our community. Things were better and we weren't feeling that way, and we were loving our skin tone. And you'd see all these stuff on social media about, you know, Black girl magic, you know, and melanin this and melanin that. So I really thought that we were just loving ourselves, but unfortunately that isn't the case. You know, there is still a lot of skin tone bias within our community, which I felt like I wanted to speak about. And obviously being an artist, I wanted to use my art to kind of start the conversation.
No, that's really interesting. I had no idea about how like bad the colorism issue is. And I think one of the things that really interests me is like seeing you work with models. And do they ever talk to you about their own experiences in other modeling jobs they've had? And do you think what you give them, what you can provide them is good for them and good for their esteem and how they're feeling?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, you know, working with some of the models I've worked with, you know, in Africa and also here, you hear the same stories about how difficult it is to get jobs. That's just standard, you know. It's definitely a lot better now since 2020, definitely. And I'm sure you've seen it as well. There's a lot more dark skinned people you see on television, on adverts, on magazines. Having Edward Enninful become the editor of Vogue magazine and bringing more Black models on that has definitely changed things in the perspective that people have on dark skinned models. But the problem is still really, really big. You know, just because we're solving some of it and you're seeing differences, the problem is still really, really big. And it's about recognizing different cultures and their standards of beauty and accepting that it's different from yours, and them accepting that their standard of beauty is okay, and it's a standard of beauty that, you know, other people can't attain to, they can never be, and understanding that it's beautiful. So, you know, teaching the models that I work with how beautiful they are. And a lot of them are like, I remember there's one of the models that I've used, she was one of the first dark skin models I used, and she's featured in a lot of my artwork, Ajara. And she said to me one day in a photo shoot, she said, I don't understand why you're using me. I don't understand why you see me as beautiful. She just couldn't get it. And going back to her experience as a model, you know, trying to get into the modern industry for such a long time and not really getting anywhere. And I look and I think, you are so stunning, it's ridiculous. But to her, because the industry has told her she's not, and she can't get the work, and she's totally always turned down, you know, coming from me as a Black woman to her, it doesn't mean anything, because your standard is by what the media tells you and what the rest of the industry tells you. And if the rest of the industry tells you you're not, me telling you're beautiful as a Black woman is like your mum telling you're beautiful. You know, it means nothing to you. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever, you know, until the industry tells you. So they're still faced with it on an everyday, you know, there's so many things that models face, you know, apart from, you know, racism, you know, sexualization and derogatory comments and stuff that they face on a daily basis. But it's a horrible industry that I really, really hope will be reformed soon.
And it's not on your shoulders to like know how to reform it, but what would you like to see the industry do to make these changes?
I think first of all, the age that young people are getting into modeling is ridiculous. You know, from the age, you know, and I'm talking about adult modeling, not children, not kids modeling where the parents are there and stuff, but adult modeling where, you know, it should be from 21, but it's from 16, you know, where girls can go off by themselves, and you know, parents don't necessarily have to be with them, and they're put in with a mentor or whoever will look after them. You know, they're exposed to so many things that young girls should never be exposed to, from, you know, drug abuse to, you know, rape to pornography, you know, alcohol abuse. That's how it starts, you know, because you get them first of all starving themselves because they want to fit in and, you know, look the part and doing ridiculous things to their bodies just so that they stand a chance. So that, first of all, is one of the things that need to change. But I think, you know, things have changed a lot. Obviously, we've seen the beauty of standard changing. We've seen, you know, more plus size models on the catwalk mixed with, you know, slimmer models. You know, people like Rihanna, who's changing the way the fashion industry looks at beauty. Of course, there are things changing all the time. But I think for me, first of all, the age thing has to be the first thing that we change, and allowing more older models to still carry on walking for a longer period because they're more experienced, and then they can really help and mentor the younger ones. But also, you know, the same with every industry is education as to what beauty is, and accepting, you know, these people need to be educated, accepting that there is variety of beauty and they're all just as important and as valid and as beautiful as each other, and highlighting that in the right way. So not using token models because you need a Chinese model in that picture, I need a Black model in that picture, so I'm going to pick any and I'm going to make them still kind of look white. Just, you know, accepting people's features based on their culture, their nationality, their heritage, that, you know, that's what beauty is. And having more articles that really highlight what natural and true beauty is, it would be great to see.
Definitely. So moving away slightly, I want to talk about your artwork. This is me in particular. I've got a few questions that I'm like really interested in. So firstly, why all of the insects? I'm curious about that.
So that has changed over time in terms of the insect. The insects started off with, I was looking at, you know, obviously you had these beautiful models that I was working with, and I wanted to put something that was equally beautiful and equally valuable, but people didn't like around them. And it was just like the contrast of beauty and these insects. So like the the bees, stinging you and stuff. So I wanted to do something that I could really place around, but then also it was also a reminder of nature. It was around the time that I was starting to really get into nature and understanding nature more, and it was just a reminder that we shouldn't forget, yes, beauty is important and makeup and all that kind of stuff, but we should also think about the effects it's having in nature and the environment, and how much the industry pollutes the environment. Fashion is such a huge factor in the pollution and the waste. So it was just like little tokens to kind of remind myself and remind people, if they ask me that question, this is the reason why I always try and feature insects in my work.
No, because it does create an overall like beautiful, it doesn't disturb, it's all works together quite beautifully as well. And I love as well that it's not just clothing and you've got the beautiful colours, but also the use of accessories as well. Like, talk me through those.
Yeah, so the use of accessories, so a lot of my work is portraits, and it was like, okay, how can I show as much fashion as I can from the shoulder up? And obviously accessories was such a huge factor in it. But also going back to my heritage, in Africa, accessories, jewelry, beads is so much part of our daily life, whether it's your wedding outfit, or you're just going out for the night, or you're being made a chief, or a king, or you're married. It's very much part, and we really adorn ourselves with so many different types of jewelry, from beads to gold to diamonds and pearls and stuff. It's really part of what we do. So if we look back into our culture, you'll see especially beading all the way through. So yeah, that was really what I wanted to highlight. And whenever I go back to Africa a lot, to Nigeria especially, which is where I'm from, I'm always astounded by the use of accessories and how they're not afraid to be bold and wear multiple layers, and men and women would dress up as if they were about to meet the queen, and this was just a daily, everyday occurrence, and I really wanted to highlight that in my work.
No, it's gorgeous. And I think in terms of like getting your work shown in galleries and stuff, how has it been approaching curators? Because obviously the art world as well is very white male, elitist dominated. How has that been with something that so clearly like celebrates Nigerian heritage?
Yeah, I mean, this is a question that people ask me all the time. How's it been as a Black female artist in the UK trying to get my work seen? And I approached my work differently. I started my work differently. So my work was very much digital work. It's a very digital influenced, and so putting it online was my first point. So I wasn't really relying on galleries as much. Social media was my first platform, and the recognition came from social media. When I did start trying to approach galleries to exhibit my work, it wasn't easy. There was, as you said, a lot of them are very elitist. And the area that I live in Hampstead, Northwest 3, borough of Camden, is known as the arts borough. So there's hundreds of galleries in the borough, and especially just going up to my high street alone, there's about at least 20 galleries around where I live, small galleries, and trying to get them to showcase my work wasn't easy at all. And you'd get the same thing, oh my God, your work is amazing, it's so beautiful, but send it to this person, and then you send it and you wouldn't hear back, or they're full, they're not taking on any new people at the time. And what I find is that art is something that I think transcends culture. It transcends, because it's all about, it's creativity, it's beauty, the same way that music and film, we all love it. It's part of what makes us smile and what makes us happy and what teaches us things. And I felt like the community is missing out so much when it doesn't embrace art from different cultures. And as a Black person living in Hampstead, in the borough, I'm like, why am I not seeing more art that reflects me, that's really about my culture? And I think a lot of it is about, not, it's ignorance. It's not understanding the industry. These gallerists and these curators who and agents who probably don't have Black clients, and they don't know who they would sell it to, and they don't know what the market is like and who would buy it and how it would sit. So it's like taking a risk. You'd need someone who really, really wants to take a chance and say, do you know what, let me put it out there and see what people think. And a lot of them are not really willing to do that. And so I did find it a little bit of a struggle, but I did find a few, don't get me wrong, there were, you know, one or two white agents that loved the work and they really wanted to put it out there. So one of the agents I work with, Kim, from Gone Rogue, she's a white agent, and she's been very much a supporter of me right from the start. Before I even, literally when I started as an artist, she was like, you know, I really want you to have you on board. And she's had exhibitions for me and they've been really successful. One of the first pieces I sold in the UK was to a white man, a middle-aged white man who, again, I was even surprised myself, because I think, oh, you know, what is it about this work that you really like? And, you know, there was something about it that he loved. And so it goes to show that, you know, you just have to give people the choice to decide what they want. And if you don't give them that choice, you don't know what they want. So for me, you know, what I would say to the galleries is, you know, take the chance. And it shouldn't even be me saying take the chance as if, you know, I'm getting them to do something that's really crazy. It's like, you know, open up your eyes to different artists and your catalog of different works. And, you know, you just don't know who your biggest customers could end up being. In the last few years, Sotheby's has started, you know, doing a lot of Black African art auctions, and they've been one of the most successful they've ever had. They've broken records in terms of sales. So there is definitely a market for Black artists in the UK, and it's something that people are really looking for.
And as well, I saw on your Instagram, was it the Camden Black Creatives, and it was a group of you and other women. How important is that collective, not just as a support network, but I suppose creatively inspiring each other and stuff like that?
Yeah, so Camden Black Creatives was a way of us, we really looked at, you know, again, it was after 2020 and just looking at, you know, what changes do we need to make in our community? And one of them was visibility. And I'm like, you know, how can we change the way people see each other if they don't see each other? If they don't have the opportunity to experience culture and experience other people's experiences and lives and what they do. And one of the best ways I think to do it is to make the high street a lot more inclusive and make it a lot more visible of the different cultures that you see around. You know, when you walk down the high street and all you see is the same types of shops, the same types of people selling the same type of products, that's all you know, and until that changes, you know, if you go into a shop and you see, you know, one shop owned by a Chinese person, you go a little bit further and you see another one owned by a Black person, Asian person, you're experiencing their culture, you're seeing it. And so this is what we wanted to do with Camden Black Creatives, is to have spaces on the high street that we could show our culture, we could show our work and our businesses, and where people can meet different people. And so we were lucky enough last year to get a pop-up shop in Hampstead High Street, which is a very predominantly, you know, white high street with, you know, shops that, you know, high-end shops that people know about in the area. So we really wanted to bring a change, and we brought so much color and vibrancy when we had our pop-up shop. It was amazing, the response that we had. There was color everywhere. There was like all these pops of artwork on the walls, there was clothes, there was homeware from different designers and, you know, Black businesses. And the response that we had from the community was just amazing. And it's something that I'm hoping that I'm working with Camden at the moment to do more of that and change the dynamic of how the high street is seen, and bring a lot more diversity with the types of businesses that people get a chance to buy from.
Fantastic. So that sort of project you've got going on, what future projects have you got that you're excited about at the moment?
Well, another thing I'm excited about is I've got two things coming up. I've just started, actually, I can't even say one of them right now. I've just realized I can't reveal it until next week.
Ooh, okay.
Next week it will be really revealed, the new projects I'm working on. But one way of finding out about it is another project that I've just signed up to. So myself and 3 other Black artists are going to be at the Affordable Art Fair in Hampstead Heath. from the 5th to the 8th of May. And I'm really excited about this because this is part of my group, Camden Black Creative, again, trying to bring diversity. And, you know, this is the Affordable Art Fair's 10-year anniversary. And they also wanted to bring diversity to the art fair and bring more Black artists in there, which is something that you don't really get to see. I've been to the Affordable Art Fair a few times in Hampstead and hardly ever see any Black artists there. So it's really nice of them that they recognize this, and it's something that they also wanted to change in terms of the artwork that's on offer to their clients, to their buyers, to curators, to galleries, and to families, because it's very much a family event, you know, with parents bringing their kids. And so we were given a space there to showcase our work. So that's really exciting. So I'm getting ready for that right now, and I'll be showing a new piece that no one's seen before, and it's especially for the art fair. And I'll be revealing my new project as well on that day, on the 5th. So if anyone is at the Affordable Art Fair, come to our stand, Camden Black Creator stand, and all will be revealed on that day. Happy about how things are going.
Brilliant. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I feel like you just had so much to say, which is always great. I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.